In Module 9, we're going to talk about string manipulation. Strings are all around you. You've used them before, or you've used them, for example, to log in to your email. The password that you type in is a string. Your username is a string. You've used them to fill up web forms. You've used strings in so many different ways. When you type up a word processing document, when you type up an email, all that is a string. Strings are basically a sequence. We've learned about sequences. We've learned about lists. We've learned about basic tuples. Okay. Strings are nothing more than a collection of characters. For example, in this case, Juliet is a string that is a collection of these 6 characters. And I can, using a loop, I can iterate through this whole string just the way I would iterate through any other sequence. So I can use a program, for example, to count the number of specific letters in a string. How many E's are there? How many I's are there? How many J's are there? This is from your major learning resource, your textbook. Your string input is exactly like a numeric input, except you don't need to parse it as an int or a float. The input is by default a string. We say for ch in my string, we know about for loops by now. And if the character is uppercase T or lowercase t, then we know that that character is in there. And there is no otherwise, and that creates a count. So this is one way of manipulating a string. This is traversing through the string, looking through each character in the string. Going back to this, for ch in name, the first character you look at is J. The second character you look at is U-L-I-E-T, Juliet. And that's how you traverse the whole string. Okay. Now, when you are looking at strings, then you can also calculate the length of the string using the len function. And you can also concatenate strings. And when you look at strings, because they are sequences, you might have a situation where you're trying to go outside the range of bounds of a sequence. In that case, you will throw an index error exception. If you try to go out of bounds of the index, you want an exception to be raised, and the exception you want to be raised is the index error exception. If you have any doubts about exceptions, please go back and refer to the module about files and exceptions, which is the module about files and exceptions is module number 7. Okay, so strings can be joined, they can be concatenated, and the way strings are concatenated is actually pretty simple. You may have looked at this before. Name Carmen, the name is name. Name is equal to name plus Brown. Now the name is name. Now name plus Brown. So what that does is it concatenates one space, which is inside the quote, and the string Brown onto the existing string Carmen. So the name now becomes Carmen space Brown. So if I run this module, the name is Carmen. Now the name is Carmen space Brown, because that got concatenated on. Concatenation is important in strings. When you are typing up, for example, even into a web form, you're typing up multiple small strings. They're all concatenated one onto the other to form a large string. Okay. One of the things you should know is that once strings are created, they really cannot be changed. Okay, strings stay pretty static. They're pretty static. They're immutable, right? And even though it appears that this string Carmen has been modified to include space brown. It really hasn't. A totally new string is created that is now assigned to name, and that is overwritten. Now there are other string functions that you need to know about, and some of those string functions we'll look at just now. There are, for example, some string testing methods. Is alnum, is alpha, is digit, is lower, is space, is upper. All of these are known as ISA functions, and these are string testing methods, and they return a Boolean value. So, for example, is digit returns true if the string contains only numeric digits and is at least one character in length. Okay, you may have seen places where it says please enter only numbers. And you enter a alphabetic character, you will get an error message, and these are the kind of functions that check for those. Is it all lowercase? Is it all uppercase? Is there a space? Does it contain only white space characters? Is it a space? Okay, so all of these are string testing functions. And then you have string modification functions. And these are some string modification functions. The most common one you might use is the lower function. You might use the outstrip, which strips all leading white space characters. You might use a strip, which returns a copy of the string with all leading and trailing white space characters removed. You might use the function upper, which returns all alphabetic letters converted to uppercase. So these are all string functions, and they are very useful when you're dealing with strings. Right. Now, some of the other things you can do with a string is you can have search and replace functions in a string. So you can have a find, a replace, you can do a starts with, which is a substring, replace old and new. These functions are very useful, particularly when you're trying to edit something. You may be asked to write a program with Morse code, so this is how you simulate Morse code. And this is just a string of 2 dashes, 2 dots, 2 dashes. This is a string of a dot, a dash, dot, dash, dot, dash. Okay, so let's look at some of the functions. For example, splitting a string. Right, splitting a string, in this case, again, this is from your the Gaddis text. Here is a date string, and here is the character you want to split by, and that is this character right here. So you can give any character for the split. You can give a space for the split, you can give a comma, a semicolon, a period. So print month, and what does it split it into? It's splitting it. The string is being split into 3 different independent sequences here. This is one of the string methods that you can use to manipulate a string. Yet another string method that you can use on a string is the string test method. Okay, and these are some of the methods we just looked at. So user string input, enter a string. If user string is alnum. So this is how the testing methods are used. The dot operator is used, and that's to identify this as a member function of the string class. So these are some of the methods that are used to test the strings. Then you can have methods that also do, you can have methods, for example, validate password method. There is a, while not login.validate valid password is password, that password is not valid. So this is a method that imports a file named login. And what does login contain? Login is basically a module that you've created, and in this you create a login. Okay, get the first three letters of the first name. So you get the first name and the last name, and here what are you doing? You're slicing the string. And you're getting the first name, the last name, the ID number, and based on that, you're generating a login name. And then you're getting a password for where you're checking for uppercase, you're checking for lowercase, and you're checking for digits. How many times have you seen websites that do that, that ask you, or applications that do that, that ask you to enter a password that has an uppercase, a lowercase, and a digit? So here you go. Here's how you test whether all those are present. What you do is you use the string test methods. And that's pretty much it about strings. You should read your major learning resource and enjoy working with strings.